So I'm going to show you how to do a very interesting tax lookup. This came from a question on Facebook. All right, so here we have a tax table, right? We have, in the end, this is our goal, to get this value here. But you see how we have the letter D, and I've done some conditional formatting. If I change this, it's going to change the one that's highlighted, but we have a D here. So we want to find this value, okay? Here horizontally, it could be any of these. When we find it, then we want to say, okay, find this number here within the vertical area. So it's a D, so we want to find that value, at least the closest match within this little range here. So we know we're not going to always find this exact value here, but we want to say, okay, well, it's in between 31,000 and 52,000. It doesn't quite get to the max limit, so we're going to go back to here. Now, once we realize, okay, it's in between these two, it will fall back into this one, and then we look all the way over, and this is our final answer, 4,000. Okay, so that's how this thing works. Horizontally find the letter, and then within these values, they're always getting bigger as you go down. You want to find where it fits in between the two numbers, and then look to the left and get our answer. So let's start with the first step. I'm going to build this out in little steps here, and then in the end, if we want, we could put it all into one formula here. So what's the very first step? Well, we want to do our exact match. Well, this is step 2. We have the requirements now. That's pretty clear. Step 2, exact match to find the letter over in this area. So we'll say match. We're going to say, look for this guy. In this area right here, I'll press the F4 key to lock it as a best practice. Put a 0, or I could also put a false for the exact match. That's a 4. What does that 4 mean? 1, 2, 3, 4. Because we're looking for the D in that range of 5 values. All right, so that's step 2, actually. Let's go to step 3 here. Offset with height of 8. So we're assuming that we always have 8. If that's not the case, we could also make that dynamic, but in this case, it's not required. So, offset. We're going to say, let's go right there. I'm going to lock that. That's the reference or starting point, that A3 right there. Now I'm going to say rows. How many rows down do I want to go? Well, I really only want to go down 1. Or I could even just say, you know what, let's just make this A4. And I can say we don't want to go down 0 cells. We're right there in the correct spot. The trick is how many columns to the right? Well, that's where we use this 4 right there. I'm going to just lock that, do a comma. And the height, well, we want to get 8 values. We're now using these 2 optional parameters with the square brackets. We're not retrieving one value. We're going to get all of these guys and then figure out where the 50 fits in with all of those. So we put an 8. We want a width of one column of values. Put the last bracket, and I press the Enter key. This looks like an error, but believe it or not, it is not. I'm just going to copy this, and then in case you download the file, put it here as well for the next step. So that is now going to be step 4, closest match. So here we have the exact match. Now we're doing the closest match to find the salary. We know we're not going to find this value in here. It's simply not there as exactly 50,000. But now we're just going to do this. We're going to say match, and I'm going to say here's my lookup value. We're looking within our dynamic range here. So this is the value, K12, 50,000. That's our lookup array, all those numbers. I can press F9, and they're inside of the formula. But I want this to be dynamic, so I'm going to do undo, keep it live. What if we change these? Then I'm going to say this, put a comma. What's the match type? Well, this is the time I want to put the true in there to say, just find it's within pairs of numbers in there. So that means it's, is it between these two numbers? Is it between these two? So if we go all the way down, we see now we're getting a 7. So that means it's in between the last two. Not quite 52,000, so it falls back to here. That's a 7. If I go like this and I look at how many do I have selected? Look in the name box here. It says up here once I go like this, 7 rows times 1 column. So now we know it's a 7. We know it's in between these two, falling back to here. This is when we look to the left again, and that's our 4,000, right? That's the final answer, the 4,000 right there. So now let's do one last thing. We'll take this and we will say, okay, copy that. We're going to go just paste it so that the final step you'll see. And you know what? I could use offset or index. Let's use index and say, well, out of those values, I'm going to want one of them. Which one do I want? Do all of this, press F9. It's the seventh one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sure enough, it's the 4,000. So we go like this, we press enter. And I'm going to take this and put it in here. Press enter. Now, it's still referring to this one over here. If we want this to be a standalone formula, well, I need to get K17. See how this refers to K17? Everything else in here is fine, but it's still referring to that little guy there. So I'm going to come in here, copy it, go inside of here for the K17. Oops, this guy right there. I'm going to paste it, and I got to get rid of the equal sign. Press enter. So there we have our 4,000. Now, here's something that we just cannot forget. We have to double check our results, and there's two different things we have to double check. First of all, if I change this, let's change it to the letter, I don't know, B, and change 50,000. We're going to change that to 6,800. So even without looking at the answer, B, 6,800, it falls in between here, doesn't reach this level, it goes to there. That's our answer, 10. Sure enough, there it is. All right, that's good. Now, what's the other thing? Well, when we're entering this data, it is so easy to make a mistake, and see, this has to be always getting bigger as we go down. But what if one of these numbers was off? It could actually destroy the answer. So here is a formula that I created that will check everything. I'll just take this. Let's put it way up here. Put it right there. All right, I'm going to paste it. Oh, that steps. Let's just put it right. Let's say right there. Okay, good enough. Control Shift Enter. It's an array formula. What is this bad boy doing? Well, it is, the first range is right there. See that little blue box? And it's saying if those guys are greater than the box above. So really it's checking all these different pairs of numbers. Is this one bigger than this one? Is this one bigger than this one? All the way up. Same for here, all the way up. It's always checking the one below with the one above. And every time it's true, so this is our test. Every time it's true, we get a 1. When it's false, we get a 0. Or we could put a blank as well. We do Control Shift Enter, and we get 42. Now, if you look at this, there are 8 times 6. See up in here, you'll see the 8 rows times 6 columns. Well, that is 48, but we only have actually 42 comparisons, right? Because we're not comparing these guys, these zeros, with those letters up here. So if we highlight all of this, how many is that? That is 42. We could also do this. We could just say equals. We're going to count the amount of numbers in this range. Press enter. That's 42. So now we know the two values are the same. And if you really want to have something fancy, you could just go in here and say at the end say equals that value, press enter, and that is how you can double check.